Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the All In Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, as always, Eli Cooper, and I'm joined, as always, by my guy, Mike Badzik. How's it going, man?
It's going good, my guy, and it's actually going really good because we let our listeners know last episode, and you knew this was coming, that we faced off in two fantasy matchups this weekend, and I swept the show. I swept the All In Podcast fantasy matchups, two of them, and I still got players to go, and I already won. How's that make you feel?
Well, I don't accept the results of either of those losses. There was clearly fraudulent activity going on with the Justin Jackson injury. I don't actually believe that he was hurt. So you'll be hearing from my lawyers.
Yeah, well, it could be a long road. This is going to have to go to the Fantasy Supreme Court.
No, man, but two tough losses, man. But I'm a bounce back. It's all right. I'm a bounce back.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
So, speaking of NFL, we had some exciting games this weekend. Pretty fun slate of games, some important games, which we're going to get into today. But first, don't forget, we have an app available now on the Apple Store and Google Play Store where you can stay in contact with us. You can see our social media feeds, listen to our podcast, get easy access to our website. That's actually what I mostly use it for now, is to get to our website quickly. So you can use our app to stay up to date with everything All In Network related, really All In Podcast related. The other podcasts on our network will be coming soon, so stay tuned for that. For those of you who follow those other podcasts, you'll be able to listen to all of them all in one feed on this app. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for the app update that'll be coming up soon. So make sure you download that on your smartphone, tab, or tablet. So let's talk about the game of the week. I think by far we had two legend QBs squaring off on Sunday Night Football.
Yes,
and it was this big hyped up game. Remember, these guys are like top two in the passing touchdowns, and they constantly pass each other. And then we constantly get updates about how they pass each other. Well, one person took a significant lead last night. At least for now, which was Drew Brees as the Saints beat the bricks off of the Bucs 38-3. Just an abysmal night for the Bucs. Are you chalking this up to just a bad night, or is this a sign?
Oh, I think this might be a sign about both teams, actually, and specifically if we're talking about the Bucs first. We were kind of looking at them like last week, or when we did our power rankings the last time on this show. I think I had them as the best team in the NFC, we're going to talk about the NFC, and we're going to talk about not being the same level as the AFC certainly. But what we were thinking was the defense of the Bucs. Mixed in with the weapons that they have on offense makes them the best team. Well, now we're kind of looking at it and we're thinking maybe that defense isn't exactly what we thought a couple weeks ago. Right?
Yeah.
Just to get beat up on by the Saints like this, kind of an embarrassing loss. And Drew Brees takes the lead, a significant lead in the all-time touchdown rankings, which hopefully we can not hear about that for a couple of weeks. But you know what else we have to hear about every time the Saints play is Taysom Hill, right? That's the other annoying thing is every time Taysom Hill is in the game, every announcer pretends that they've never seen Taysom Hill before and that he's this surprise thing that they have. Well, right. I will say he was really good in this game as well. He does have really good moments. I think it's probably not exactly the smart play to put him out there as much as they do when you have Drew Brees and you take him off the field and put him in there. But he played really well, and he showed why he is a weapon in this game. Now, the Saints, we're looking at them, and we've been down on the Saints pretty much all year, right? Like coming into this year, they were a popular Super Bowl pick to make the Super Bowl anyway out of the NFC because of what they did in the past couple of years. And, week one, they beat the Bucs, and we're thinking, yeah, there we go. And then they lose the next two to the Raiders, which now we're looking back on it, we're thinking, well, maybe the Raiders aren't even that bad, right? Raiders are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's, away Monday Night Football, first game in the Raiders' new stadium. Maybe we put too much stock into that loss, and then they lose the next one at Green Bay. And that was a tough game, and they were without Michael Thomas for all of these games. But quietly, they've won 5 in a row. Right now, they'd be the number 1 seed in the NFC, probably, it looks like. And I don't know who left on their schedule is going to knock them off of that spot. And that's a huge spot, right? This division is a huge spot, and especially that number 1 seed is a huge spot, especially considering that only one team is going to get a bye in the playoffs this year, right? And when you're talking about Drew Brees and you're talking about Tom Brady, that is a huge thing, is getting that bye. We saw this last year with Tom Brady. We've seen this throughout Tom Brady's career, really, when he doesn't get the bye compared to when he does get the bye. And that goes for almost all quarterbacks and almost all football players, right? That bye is huge, especially in a season like this where, because of the COVID outbreaks, teams are losing their bye weeks, their normal bye weeks. They're not traditional. You don't really know what weeks you're going to be playing. Having that bye set in stone is going to be huge, I think, especially in a very jam-packed NFC where, I'm looking at the NFC and, there's no one top team, but there's also probably 6 or 7 teams that I think could win wild card weekend, right? Like, I don't think if the 2 through 4 seeds are the Packers, certainly the Eagles are probably going to be one of them, and the Seahawks. Well, the Seahawks pass defense is one of the worst in the league, and the Packers, we don't know who's going to show up. So I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams lose wild card weekend. And I agree with that. Also saying that for the Saints, right? The Saints I could also see losing wild card weekend. So that 1 seed is actually huge, especially in the NFC where there isn't those powerhouses. But they do have a nice, deep, pool of teams there that anybody could win wild card weekend. So I think this is actually a huge game because it kind of, they're going to have all the tiebreakers now with the Bucs. So this gives them a huge uptick in the division standings and the conference standings, which could end up being huge in the end.
Yeah. So for me, I think it was a little bit of both. I think the Bucs were uncharacteristically bad.
Yeah.
But I do think the Saints prove that they're the better team here. Obviously, they've beaten them twice. So there's really not a debate between these two teams and how they match up against each other. I don't know that the Saints are 35 points better than them, but it's pretty significant, I would say. And they had Michael Thomas for the majority of both of those games. And while he didn't light them up, I think he certainly makes a difference, in those games. For me, this tells me a lot about Tampa Bay's offense. I do think their defense is pretty tough and pretty elite. I think their offense put them into bad situations last night because of all the turnovers that they had, especially from Brady. And obviously the Saints offense played really well and is good. Their offense is really good. But for Brady to be this bad against a Saints defense that was mediocre, to say the least, coming into this game, is telling. And it makes me wonder if, a quarterback this age that doesn't have an elite running game or an elite running back, like Drew Brees does. On the other hand, he has Kamara, that he can kind of rely on for checkdowns and that can make, plays. And then he also has a guy like Michael Thomas now that he can consistently go to. Mike Evans doesn't seem to be that guy for Brady as far as like someone he can just consistently go to. Godwin was coming back off injury and Antonio Brown's, in his first game. So I don't know. We can really judge there.
Sure.
But they only ran the ball 5 times last night because they got down so quick. Yeah. And it makes me wonder if the Bucs can't run the ball effectively each game, how's that going to impact how well Brady plays? And things like that. So it's a lot of telling signs. And I can't for the life of me figure out why Mike Evans isn't getting as many looks with Brady as his quarterback. To me, it's baffling and it doesn't quite make sense. And now you're adding Antonio Brown to the mix. Godwin's back healthy, like I mentioned. So it's like, I don't really understand why this offense doesn't really seem to be able to get him the ball. There's rumors that he's been banged up, so he's maybe not quite running the same. In this game, I think the Marshawn Lattimore effect has a lot to do with that. Three straight games that they've lined up against each other. He's only gotten 2 targets when guarded by Marshawn Lattimore in each of those 3 games and doesn't have a catch. So he hasn't had a catch against Marshawn Lattimore in 3 games. But it's like there's games where he's not playing against Marshawn Lattimore and he's not getting a catch or only getting 1 or 2 catches. And to me, that concerns me because I still think he's the most talented receiver that they have. And really one of the most talented playmakers that they have. And if you can't get him the ball, it limits you, if you ask me.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense, like when we think about like this Bruce Arians offense, and like we've been talking about this, like the type of offense he runs, like does a 43-year-old Tom Brady fit into that? And it's a lot of throwing the ball down the field, taking chances, things that Tom Brady the last 3 years has not really done, and he certainly hasn't done it well, right? You think about, and the receivers he had in New England maybe didn't permit him to do that, but that really wasn't what he was trying to do anyway. So it kind of makes sense that Mike Evans' numbers would dip, especially when you talk about throwing the ball down the field. I think if you asked Mike Evans, and he was 100% truthful, not even, maybe he even thinks this, but like I think it's probably better for him to have a guy like Jameis Winston than a guy like Tom Brady, right? Because he can throw the ball down the field. He'll at least throw it up and give you a chance, even if it turns into an interception half the time.
Right, exactly.
So I think Mike Evans probably would prefer that, to at least have the chance.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing is if you look at Brady last season with the Patriots, the first 7 games were really good. And then he kind of fell off a cliff a little bit, and the numbers got a lot worse.
Yep.
Like demonstrably worse. And this season, the first 7 games were pretty good, really good. The last 2 have been pretty bad. And maybe that's what we should be expecting from a 43-year-old as we go down the stretch in this season. And especially with what they're asking him to do, I don't know if he fits it that well.
Yeah. I think serious questions have to be asked about whether, Bruce Arians is the right fit, not only for this team, but for Tom Brady. And it's funny that you mentioned Jameis, because you have to be, granted, he did get on the field last night, but barely. Yeah. But you have to be sitting there wondering, like, after him sitting on that sideline, like, ain't this what y'all fired me for?
Right.
You know what I mean? Ain't this why I'm here in New Orleans? It's because of these kind of performances right here.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's a you thing, and I got the blame for it. He did his little eat a W thing at the end of the game during Drew Brees' press conference, which I thought was super ironic because if you remember, he did that before he played the Saints when he was in Tampa Bay. So interesting timing of him choosing to do that in a game where Tom Brady was completely awful. He was so awful that he got on the field last night. So, a revenge game without having to play it for Jameis Winston.
Yeah, and you talk. I think that's a good point you bring up of Jameis saying maybe it's not me, it's y'all. Like maybe it's Bruce Arians. Really, Bruce Arians has gotten this weird pass. We kind of just have given him this reputation as like this great mastermind coach, but the receipts aren't really there, right? Yeah. We kind of remember as far as head coaching experience, he had a good run as the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, and for the record, every offensive coordinator with Ben Roethlisberger has gone on to be a head coach. So it's not saying that much that he had a lot of success and went on to be a head coach there. Right. But, he had that run with Indianapolis where he stepped in for Chuck Pagano when he got sick and it was emotional and they made the playoffs. And then, from that, we kind of just anointed him as one of these best coaches in the league, one of these offensive geniuses. I'm not sure that that's actually true. Right. And it's kind of playing out, especially these last 2 weeks, and even last year, that maybe he's not who we thought he is.
Yeah, and I think it's his offense just breeds too many turnovers with that style of play. Like, look at the track record. I can't go all the way back to Big Ben. You would know that better than I would. But if we look at his record as a head coach, Andrew Luck turned it over a lot. Yeah. Then he comes he went to Arizona, right, first, and then didn't really have a quarterback, so I don't know how much we can truly measure that, but certainly a lot of turnovers during that time. Then he comes here to Tampa Bay. Jameis, who already had coming into the draft. One of the big questions was his turnover. You put him in a Bruce Arians offense, and he's like legendary for interceptions. And then you get Tom Brady, someone who is relatively not known at all for turning the ball over. And I don't know where his ranking is through 9 games as far as picks thrown. I would say it's got to be somewhere near the top ever in his career of interceptions that he's thrown. And he's still 6-3, but it's just that inconsistency. These are the kind of games that you can get from the Bucs because their offense, there's nights where their offense will just turn it over way too much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's kind of, Bruce Arians, they've always said he's like the QB whisperer. I don't know which QB it was. If he didn't transform Andrew Luck. He wasn't responsible for that. He had Carson Palmer in Arizona, who was able to kind of extend his career, but he was never like fantastic in Arizona or anything. Right. And he did have the most turnovers in his career one of the years playing for Bruce Arians. And then Jameis, so I don't know quite where he got that reputation. Maybe it's the hats. It must be the hats.
It must be the hats. All right, so let's play our favorite game.
Yes.
All in or all out. We've got a list of interesting topics to discuss here. And the first one, are the Dolphins in the AFC East contender?
Absolutely. They have to be right now. You look at them, they're right now a game and a half back of the Bills. So they're 2 back in the win column, 1 back in the loss column. But if you ask me right now who's better, I'd probably say Miami because of the defense, right? Like their defense, and I know Kyler Murray lit him up, right? But he's been lighting up everybody, right?
Everybody,
So when we talk about Kyler Murray, he's probably a top 5 quarterback right now. So I do cut Miami some slack in Arizona. Offense travels more than defense usually. Yeah. So I do cut them some slack for that. But like they've been really good, and they made the stops when they needed to as well.
Yeah.
But even looking at their remaining slate, right? So right now they're 5-3. They've got the Chargers this week. Then they've got the Broncos. Then they've got the Jets, Bengals, Patriots at home. So that's what, 4 wins or 5 wins? Pretty much that we can chalk up right now. Like, and they play the Bills again. They play the Bills the last week of the season. I would not be surprised at all. In fact, I would probably predict that Week 17 game against the Bills will be for the AFC East. And I talked about the defense. Our guy Tua.
Yeah.
We did not know about Tua, right? Last week, we kind of, his first game, he didn't really need to do much because of the defense. And we're like, we learned nothing about Tua. Well, we learned a lot about Tua this week. And guess what? He's a gamer. He steps up in the big moments. He makes the throws. And people I think are kind of forget, like, and Joe Burrow was, had a transformative senior year at LSU. And, he absolutely deserved to be the number 1 pick. But before that year, Tua was the hands down, definitely going to be number 1 pick. One of the best QB coming out that we've seen in a couple of years. Like he was that guy, and he had the injury, but he seems to have healed from the injury, and he played so well on Sunday. Really outdueled Kyler in some ways on the road. That is a game that and we talked about. Should the Dolphins have moved on from Ryan Fitzpatrick? Ryan Fitzpatrick does not win that game. You know what I mean? Hands down. So I think, it is definitely the right decision, not only for now, but for the future to give Tua kind of, a training run. And something else I was thinking about too was these rookie quarterbacks this year, right? Like, so we've talked about Burrow, we've talked about Herbert, and now we're talking about Tua and how good they've been. Like it's been crazy how good they've been.
Yeah.
But, it made me think of when we were talking about the MLB playoffs. And I was talking about rookie pitchers, young pitchers, pitching with no fans in that environment and how much easier it was. Well, I think it's kind of that way right now for rookie quarterbacks, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're almost getting like a training run at this before the fans. Like the pressure isn't quite there. And they're able to perform. And they're also super talented, right? This might be one of the best QB classes we've seen in a long time. Yeah. But it also is that much easier without fans. And they've been so good, like all 3 of them. So Dolphins, for me, are definitely AFC East contenders. And it says I'm saying that more about them and less about the Buffalo Bills, who I think are good. I think the Dolphins are legit.
Agreed. I think the Dolphins are legit as well. I think there's a strong possibility that they can win this division. I would not be surprised if they beat the Bills twice. I think they still have to play them twice. I don't think they've played yet.
They played once, I think.
They played once. Okay, so they'll get a chance to see each other again. But even if they don't win the division, I think we can almost book them as a playoff team at this point. I think that's pretty safe to say, especially since we're in the 7 teams now. So the Raiders will have something to say about that, and possibly the Browns, as well. But I think the Dolphins are much stronger than both of them. And again, to piggyback off what you said, Tua is absolutely the real deal. And granted, I know the Cardinals defense isn't like elite or anything like that, but they're not bad. They've certainly got playmakers, Budda Baker and Patrick Peterson and Chandler Jones. They got a number of playmakers on that defense, and it's not like a Swiss cheese kind of defense like you would see in like Josh Allen saw this weekend in Seattle.
Oh my gosh.
Tua kind of has this rookie Russell Wilson vibe to him, like a left-handed type Russell Wilson to him. And he makes great decisions. The ball gets out of his hands quick. And his escapability in the pocket, and then also being able to get out of the pocket and make plays down, with his legs. Yeah. It's very similar to young Russell Wilson. If you really think back to how he was as a rookie, he was kind of a game manager because that defense was so elite. But when they needed him to make the plays, he could. And now we're seeing Russell Wilson is which for the most part of this season, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league, regardless of how good his defense is. But I kind of see that progression for Tua. Like right now, if he needs to be a game manager, he'll be a game manager. If you need him to make plays down the stretch, he can make the plays down the stretch for you. So I think apparently coming into this, there was a report that the reason they went to Tua, even at 3-3, was because they needed to find out whether they were going to draft a QB in 2021. And I think you can call that off, right? I think you found out after this one.
That's just so stupid. Like the patience of teams has just gone. I mean, and you think of like Josh Rosen and what happened there. Like,
right?
They just don't give these quarterbacks a chance. But let me ask you 2 questions. So if we're saying, Steelers, Chiefs, Ravens are the 3 in the AFC. Are the Dolphins the next one? It'd probably be them, Bills, or Titans.
Yeah, I would probably – well, the power rankings will tell for sure.
True.
Right now,
don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Okay, we'll say that.
What about this? Brian Flores, coach of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I think he's certainly at the top of that list right now.
Maybe Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, he's undefeated. So those two neck and neck, but they're certainly in the conversation. Yeah. I also had an invested stake in this game. I was rooting for Tua late down the stretch because I had a little parlay that ended up hitting where I needed the Dolphins to win this one. And thankfully, Arizona's kicker came up short on a 49-yard field goal. It was online, just short. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I saw a field goal under 50 yards be short. However, thank you for letting my parlay hit. And a reminder, you guys can use our promo code ALLINPOD at mybookie.ag to get 100% of your deposit matched up to, or minimum $45 up to $1,000. And there's offshore thing. It's an offshore betting site, so you can, bet on certain things that you can't bet here in the States, or if gambling is not legal in your state, you can use MyBookie as they're an offshore site. So make sure you use the promo code ALLINPOD to get 100% deposit match.
Yep, free money, people.
Exactly. So next thing we have in our all-in, all-out game, Pat Mahomes. Is he the new front runner? Is it time to give Pat Mahomes the lead in the MVP race?
He's got to be. He's got to be the MVP front runner. Russell Wilson, the last 2 weeks, has really lost that claim. I mean, he's just when you look at the TD interception ratio, and Mahomes is like almost on demand, right? It's like, oh, you guys need me to score right now? Okay, let's score. Right? Like you can't stop him. Like when he's like, okay, we're scoring this drive. they score. Like, they're just an unstoppable force right now. When you watch the games, even, like, he's just so clearly better than everyone else, which I know best player isn't the, MVP standard. That's not what we use. But when the numbers back it up and when your team has one loss and, you're probably going to be, the 1 or 2 seed in the AFC, I think the claim speaks for itself. I think he has to be the front runner right now. The interesting thing is, when we talk about, like, who's even in the race right now. So, like, Russell Wilson's probably still in it. He's certainly not out of it. Mahomes is probably definitely the front runner right now. The interesting thing is, like, you talk about the Steelers undefeated. They really don't have an MVP candidate.
Right.
Just because of the way their team plays, they don't really have an MVP candidate. Nobody's putting up huge numbers or anything like that.
Right.
And if you think about, like, who's third or fourth on that list, like, I don't even know who it is. Is it Aaron Rodgers still? Probably not. Like, you know who my dark horse is? If they reel off 6 wins in the next 7 games or something close to that, and they can sneak into the playoffs, you know who it might be?
Who?
Dalvin Cook.
Ooh.
The dude has been unreal the last couple weeks. It's almost like he just said, like, Kirk Cousins, you freaking blow. I got it. Give me the ball. Like, and, like, since he's been doing it, they've been winning.
Yeah.
So if they reel off some wins, and I actually like their team. I like their team coming into the year.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things, so now I'm going on a Vikings tangent, but which is unplanned. But, at the beginning of the year, they kind of said, let's let Kirk sling it, right? Like, for the first time ever, they were like, let's let Kirk sling it. And he was throwing it deep, like, way more often than he ever has before. He was throwing it downfield way more often than he ever has before. The last couple of weeks, they've reeled that in back to a more Viking-esque run-pass ratio. And right now, it's the high. Last couple of weeks, it's been the highest run-to-pass ratio, so they're running more than anybody. And it's working, and it's a formula for working. And they have still good players in that defense. I would not count them out of the 7th seed. And if they make the playoffs and Dalvin Cook keeps it up, he could be in the race. But right now, it's Mahomes.
Yeah, I agree. And especially on the Vikings thing, listen, Kirk Cousins is solid, but if you try to make him be great, he will be incredibly bad. It's like weird how that works, right? Where, like, if you can limit Kirk Cousins to like 20 passes a game, you're in great shape.
Yeah.
If he goes over that, it gets bad.
Good, we're athletes, both of us, same level. And I play pickup hoops, right? When my team asked me to stand in the corner and shoot, play limited defense, it'll work out great. Okay, I'll be one of the best teammates you have in pickup. But when you ask me to be the primary ball handler, that's not my game, man. We're gonna lose. Okay, I'm cool in the corner. Don't ask me to do too much. It's the same with Kirk Cousins.
100. Agreed. All right. So, Pat Mahomes is my MVP front runner as well. Yeah. I think, like you said, he's the one quarterback where it's like, oh, you need me to flip the switch? All right, let's start making plays. There was one play that they had in the red zone last night where he's like pretending that he's running down the line, making the calls, and then he just comes back, catches, rolls out to the right, throws it, hits somebody in the back of the end zone, touchdown. And I was just kind of like, what even was that? Was that? I mean, obviously they designed it to do that, but I was like, it was a little bit pointless. Like, you could have just ran that play without him faking to do that. But it just says something about the talent. Like, this guy is like almost trying to continue to impress us because he's running out of ways to impress us. Right. Like, it's just and at this point, with the way that this Chiefs offense is playing, no one really wants to see them except for Pittsburgh. Right. I think that's that's the only team you can even consider being in the conversation with them. And because Pittsburgh doesn't necessarily have, like you said, a player who's putting up these ridiculous numbers, I think Pat Mahomes does become the MVP frontrunner here. However, if there was someone from the Steelers, I think you have to say it's Big Ben, right? Like, you've already matched your win total in half as many games simply by him being healthy. Like, you literally have, other than Chase Claypool.
Yeah, that's a strong case.
And I guess, like, James Conner is healthier
I don't matter
than he was before. But, like, the difference clearly is a competent quarterback, back there. And undefeated to start already. So
and we talk about like the Mahomes and like scoring on demand, and obviously Big Ben and the Steelers are not that level. But every time they've needed to get a score, Big Ben has made it look pretty easy going down the field. I mean, he really has. Every time against the Ravens, you think about the fourth quarter drives he had, like he pretty much made it look easy and went right down the field twice. And then against the Cowboys, obviously they got off to a slow start, but when they needed to kick it on, he went right down the field. Like I do think that, he has been really good.
Yeah. And to me, I don't think there's as drastic of a change. Like if you talk about the quarterback position means the most in the NFL. But when you talk about like the Steelers were clearly just a quarterback away from being this good. Like it was obvious last year because of how well the defense like played and kept you guys at 500 literally by itself. And he elevates this team into Super Bowl contender. If we're talking about most valuable, I think Big Ben deserves to be in that discussion. He's certainly top 5 in my opinion.
Love it.
But Mahomes is absolutely the front runner. Last thing we'll get to, all in, all out on the Seahawks being Super Bowl contenders. Are they still there?
Well, and I think if we're saying to win the Super Bowl, I think both of our top 3 teams are in the AFC. So I would say that, if they're the 4th team, maybe.
Yeah.
I would say that they have to be Super Bowl contenders because they have Russell Wilson. He's the second best quarterback in the league. He makes plays that are unbelievable. Now, I'll tell you this though. I've never seen a team win the Super Bowl with this kind of defense, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like I think I saw like this is the worst pass defense in the history of the league right now. And that's even with Jamal Adams coming back and
that's with how the Cowboys secondary has been.
Right. I mean, like it's unbelievable. Josh Allen was carving them up. Josh Allen, who I criticize a lot, was carving them up. Like, and they knew it too, right? Like, even like if you looked at the game plan, right, and you're like, because I think it's telling. Like you could tell what teams struggle with by how teams game plan against them.
Yep.
And the Bills came out. I think they threw it on 22 of their first 25 plays.
Oh my God.
Right? Like they had the highest pass rate. So there's actually this one stat that's interesting that I saw. And it's like it's pass rate and it's how often you pass it, but it eliminates times where you're like forced to pass it. So if you're losing by a ton, it eliminates those. If you're winning by a ton, it eliminates those. It's like times where it's actually you could run or pass.
Right.
The Bills had the highest pass rate in any game of all time in this game, right? So that's the game plan they came out with because they knew the Seahawks just can't stop anything. And if you watch the game at all, Josh Allen didn't do anything spectacular, but the dudes were 1 wide open and 2 when they caught it, Seahawks could not tackle.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem for the Seahawks that I don't know if they can overcome. Something needs to change, or Russell Wilson needs to be the best player in the league. Or they don't have a chance, but they still have him.
Yeah. Actually, I'm all out on them being Super Bowl contenders. I don't think they can make it out of the NFC like this. And granted, there are, obviously these other NFC teams have their own flaws. Yeah. But, like, I don't see how, if it comes down to them and the Saints, how they beat the Saints with their secondary being this bad. Like, Michael Thomas is putting up 200 yards against the secondary.
Easy.
Even if you talk about the Bucs, the Bucs, I think, would light this secondary up. I think some of the other contenders, I think Green Bay would love. I think Devontae Adams would love to see the Seahawks. I think Green Bay definitely would. Yeah, so you know what I mean? It's just I don't know how they beat these other contenders, given how bad that secondary is.
And I don't trust any of them either, though. That's the thing. Like if we're talking about to make the Super Bowl, because if you make the Super Bowl, you got a chance to win it. So if they can make the Super Bowl, then they're definitely a Super Bowl contender. But like you talk about the Bucs, and I think we kind of still like the Bucs. But like, when's the last time you saw a team make the Super Bowl and you were like, remember that one time they lost 38-3? Like that doesn't happen. Like teams don't lose like that.
Yeah, true.
End up making the Super Bowl. So I don't know if we're even considering them a Super Bowl contender either right now. And then it's just the Saints and the Packers and the Seahawks still have the best quarterback of those 3, even though Rodgers is really good and Brees is historically one of the best. I think I'd still take Russ. So I think I'm still going to call him a contender But I like those teams more right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and maybe we're overreacting. Because they did, granted, get off to a 6-0 start. But the last 2 weeks have been telling, and the secondary's glaring issues are there. And it makes me wonder if Russ has not just a bad game, because there were moments where he was really good in this. Like I would say like a 6 out of 10 in this one.
Yes.
But like if he's an 8 out of 10, is that enough for them to win in the playoffs with how bad this secondary is? Well, not if Rodgers is a 10 out of 10. Not if not if Brady's on his game, not if Brees is on his game. Like if those other quarterbacks are at least, good, I don't know what Russ can do other than be perfect that would get them past them in the playoffs.
Well, he does need to be perfect, and I think that's a really good point. And I also think, like, if I'm Russ and I know that no matter where their team gets the ball, they're probably going to go down and score, right? Yeah. It forces me to take risks that I might not normally take. Right?
Exactly.
So if it's 3rd and 11, like I'm going to go for it. I'm going to, try to fire it in between two guys to try to pick it up because I know if I'm punting, they're going down and scoring. So, like, that affects his play as well. I think we saw that in this game as well.
Agreed.
And that's probably what turned him into a 6 out of 10 instead of his normal 9 or 10.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how the NFC plays out. There's no true team that you look at in the NFC right now, like, yeah, they're the best team. Every team has its flaw. I think the Seahawks have the most glaring, but they also have the biggest strength, which is Russell Wilson. Yep. So we'll see how that plays out in the end. So let's go ahead and get down to it. Let's take a look at our top 10 NFL power rankings. We'll start at 10 and then kind of work our ways down. And we'll chat about them a little bit each on the way as we go. So why don't you go ahead and give me number 10 on your list?
Okay. Number 10, I have the Bills here. And as much as I think that defense has struggled at times this year, and they're certainly not the defense in Buffalo that we're used to, and I certainly do not trust Josh Allen. He played really well. And they are 7-2 right now, which would put them, they're in the driver's seat in their division. So I don't think I can keep them out of the top 10 any longer.
Yeah, I think the Bills are certainly a top 10 team as well. I'll have them somewhere here in our power rankings. For me, I had at number 10 Tennessee. I think they got back on track this week with a win, so they moved back into my top 10, sitting at 6-2 on the year. So they've came in 10th in my power rankings this week.
Yeah, I had them at 9 actually. So I think they're in first place in the AFC South, which is not a bad division, even though two of the teams have really bad records. I don't think the Texans are as bad as their record.
Yeah.
Big game on Thursday, though. So if they lose to the Colts, obviously they're going to drop out.
Agreed. Yeah, and that's a big division game. So that has more riding on it than just their ranking here in the top 10. Those are the two best teams in the AFC South, I think, by far.
Definitely.
So at number 9, I had Arizona. They dropped from 6 to 9 for me this week. So with the loss to Miami, I thought unfortunate because they probably could have won this game in overtime if their field goal makes a relatively easy kick. I don't want to make it seem like I could do that, but a 49-yarder is something you'd expect most NFL kickers to make, and he was short on it. But sitting at 5-3, they're a little bit inconsistent. They've got some bad losses, but then they have like good wins like they had in Seattle.
Yeah.
I don't consider this a bad loss because Miami's been really good, but they're a little inconsistent for me. So they fall to number 9 this week.
So at 8, I have the Dolphins here. And I just, before this, I just said that I would take them over the Titans and the Bills. So I have to put them ahead of the Titans and the Bills. But you can see it is close. And, I'll just sneak preview because I have Arizona at 7, which is just one spot ahead of Miami. And you probably maybe think to yourself, well, wait a second. Miami just beat them on the road. Shouldn't they be higher? I think I still need to see more out of Tua, a couple weeks doing this before I'm ready to put him ahead of, Kyler Murray, who I trust a lot more. And I think, going forward, I think I'd still rather have that roster and Kyler Murray. If Tua keeps doing it, though, obviously they're going to be jumping them soon.
Yeah, agreed. So here is where I had the Bills.
Okay.
Came in at number 8 for me. I think, given the Seahawks secondary is bad, but we've seen them in the last couple of weeks with relatively easy matchups, and Josh Allen was not able to take advantage. Looks like he got back on track this week, so they move up to number 8 after a big win. And then for number 7 for me was Tampa Bay. They slid down a couple of spots with their loss, but I still have faith in that defense. I think this one is more of an outlier than anything else, but a loss nonetheless. So I do have them here at 7. So who'd you have at 6?
6, I had the Seahawks here. And I will tell you, I do not have Tampa on my top 10. They fell completely out for me because of that loss. And Tom Brady, his trajectory right now, the way he's trending is down. The defense is trending down, and I just couldn't justify putting them ahead of the 7-2 Bills, the Titans, the Dolphins. So I have them out for right now. But at number 6, I have the Seahawks here. Obviously, we just talked about them, and I'm still very worried about that defense for sure. But Russell Wilson is the second best quarterback in the league.
So number 6 is where Miami comes in for me.
Okay.
Right outside the top 5. Now, remember, for those of you tuning in, my power rankings are based off of a formula designed on point differential, opponent win percentage, home and away, and a little bit of eye test. Last week, Miami came in at number 9 statistically, just off of the numbers for me. I slid them down to 13 because I didn't think they were top 10 just yet. Yeah. But this week I'm following the numbers because that was an impressive win on the road against a Arizona team that I had in my top 5. So they shot up my rankings again this week. And really, it's more than just Tua for me because I do like Tua, but that defense, number 1 scoring defense coming into this game, not sure where they'll end up ranking. There's still a Monday night game to play as we're recording this. But they're still going to be towards the top of that ranking. The defense, surprisingly, with everything that they gave up, no more Minka Fitzpatrick. You know what I mean? We thought they were going into a tanking year. This defense has been very good, to say the least. And now I think they have a quarterback who not only can, not mess it up for you, but when you need him to make plays down the stretch, I think he's capable of doing it. Maybe it's too early to say that, but I have a lot of belief in Miami.
So just thinking logically about this, then that means that the Seahawks are not on your list?
The Seahawks fell out of my top 10.
Because
they did fall out of my top 10.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that bad.
It is. So, okay. Number 5, I have the Packers here. I think Rodgers is, besides Russell Wilson, the best quarterback in the NFC. The inconsistency is where they get me, right? I don't know if they're going to show up week to week.
Yeah.
But when they're at their best anyway, they're one of the best.
Agreed. The Packers came in at number 5 for me as well. Their run defense is what scares me the most. And I think when they play teams that run the ball well, like we saw with Dalvin Cook the week prior, they got exposed. So that's going to be something that they'll kind of have to take care of. But Aaron Rodgers, like we said, is back to, and I think we might have to start considering him in that top 5 of the MVP race. But with Aaron Rodgers playing as well as he is, Devontae Adams playing as well as he is when healthy, and if they can get Aaron Jones back to full health, I love their offense. And for me, they also came in at the 5 spot as well.
Yeah, so I think we probably agree on our entire top 5 then. Maybe not the order, but at 4 anyway, I have the Saints here. I still think those 3 AFC teams are the best in the league, but the Saints, like I said, last 5 weeks, they've been really good, and to beat up on the Bucs team that we both considered last week anyway to be top 10 teams. So I got the Saints at 4.
Yep, I have the Saints at 4 as well. So they shot up quite a bit in my rankings, especially with Seattle dropping out of the top 5. I think it's not just that they beat a Bucs team that we like; it's how they beat them. Yeah. And now that they've beat them twice, I think that says a lot about the Saints. And they have a good win against the Bears is on their schedule as well. They've got some signature wins where they might not have been so pretty, especially early on. They didn't look that great, but I think the Saints team is pretty legit.
Yeah, me too. So 3, I have the Ravens here. I'm assuming you probably do too. Coming off that Steelers loss, I think it was important for them to get this win against Indy, albeit I don't think Indy pretty much gave them the game a lot of the time, and Phillip Rivers played like Phillip Rivers, and Lamar Jackson again did not impress. It was another bad game for him.
Yep.
But they got the win. They're going to be definitely squarely in the playoffs. And looking at their schedule, they're probably going to reel off a couple here in a row before they have that Thanksgiving night game with the Steelers, which could determine the division.
Yep. Ravens come in third here for me, and the numbers don't have them quite as much of a distant third as I believe they are. It's just like you said, it looks like the formula is out on Lamar Jackson and how to slow him down. Maybe you won't completely stop him, especially in the run game, but from a passing game perspective, the last year Lamar Jackson as a thrower is long gone. Yeah. Teams have figured out how to disrupt him in the passing game, and it makes this offense so much less attractive that I just don't see how they get into the stratosphere with the Steelers or the Chiefs, who obviously are in both of our top twos. So they're pretty, I don't want to say distant, like crazy distant, but they're distant third to me until we see otherwise. And speaking of the Colts, I just want to comment on Phillip Rivers quick. He's not better than Jacoby Brissett.
No chance.
He's not right at this phase in his career. He's not better than Jacoby Brissett. I didn't like the signing when the Colts made it, and I don't like that he's playing over Jacoby Brissett right now. I don't see what he brings to the table that Jacoby couldn't do.
I mean, I think we both called that before the year where we said I think Jacoby Brissett is the better starter, and Phillip Rivers, I get it. He's been in the league a long time, and maybe he's got some kind of leadership quality that they like. Yeah. But if you're giving him a target to hit, he cannot do it.
Listen,
unless it's his wife.
I don't.
He hits that. He's got like 12 kids. So.
Oh yeah, he's Steph Curry with the shot from there.
Oh yeah.
But I don't like to pull a race card when it's not. Or when there's even a question about it, but you can't sit here and tell me that there's not a little bit of privilege that goes into him getting this job over Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah,
and maybe
privilege too.
Yeah, and I think maybe you look back through his career and maybe his name carries some weight, but what has Phillip Rivers actually done throughout his career to warrant him as this winner? You know what I mean? Or a guy that can lead your franchise. And maybe the Colts weren't looking at that, but they certainly paid him one for the one. I think they signed him to a 1-year deal or whatever. But I just don't see what was so bad about Jacoby Brissett that you had to bring in this dinosaur who can't throw. It looks bad when he tries to throw the ball. Yeah. I don't know. I think Jacoby Brissett has the Colts at 5-3 right now. That's just me.
Definitely. He did last year, I think.
So yeah, probably. If we're looking at it, I don't think
6-2 last year, actually.
Something like that. Yeah.
Before he got hurt.
Agreed. So yeah, it is what it is. So top twos, I think we both had the same order. Chiefs in second. Did you have Chiefs in second?
I did. Of course I did. Yeah. I was surprised you did.
Yeah. The second week in a row, they come in second. If the Steelers are undefeated. So, if they don't lose, I don't see how they drop. And granted, they didn't look great against the Cowboys. But I think the Cowboys just at this point are all right, if we're going to lose, let's just make it ugly, right? Let's just make it ugly for both teams. So they're kind of putting up a fight now. And Kansas City didn't win in a convincing fashion against a Panthers team that isn't bad, I would say, by any means. But, if you're not – unless they blew the Panthers out, I don't see how they would have moved up over the Steelers.
Yeah, and, talking about, this new playoff format and only one team gets the bye, it's probably going to come down to Steelers and Chiefs, and they don't play head-to-head. But it's probably a lot more important for the Steelers to get that. And, when I mentioned in the NFC discussion about Brees and Brady, Ben kind of fits into that category too, of wanting that extra week. And they actually did lose their bye week completely because of the Titans COVID situation. So it'd be really important for them to get that.
Yeah. And they lost. I mean, they had to take their bye in week 4, something like that. Yeah.
And it wasn't even a bye because they practiced all week and on Thursday. So it was not a bye really.
Exactly. So yeah. And then, so they'll have played 13 straight games or something like that before heading into the playoffs. So yeah, 100%.
That's big for them.
They'll need it the most. So Steelers come in at number 1 on both of our power rankings. So remember, my article will be coming out tomorrow with the list of the full 32 teams. So if your team did not come in this top 10 here, make sure you tune into my article at allinnetwork.net to see where the rest of the NFL teams ranked in the league. And I think that closes today's show, right?
I think that's all we had today.
Yeah, that's all we have. So we appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode of the All In podcast. We do have some exciting things going on at the network. So remember, at our website that I mentioned, allinnetwork.net, you can find the audio versions of our podcast, the All In Politics podcast, Reign and Bliss, Beast Gaming as well. You can also find merchandise for the All In podcast, and you can also find merchandise for Reign and Bliss as well. We may be having some sales coming up soon, so stay tuned for that as well. And make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can find our socials at the bottom of your screen if you're watching on YouTube. But if you're listening to the audio version on Twitter, we're at all_in_pod. And then Facebook and Instagram, All In Network. All right, Mike, you want to leave the people with any last words?
Yeah, I do want to leave the people with some last words. I just want to remind everybody how I beat up on Coop in 2 fantasy leagues. So when we are giving you guys football advice, please remember who the expert on this podcast is. It is clearly me. 2 leagues, 2 dubs. Also want to say, shout out to everybody who voted. I know a lot of our listeners are in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania turned up for Joe Biden with the mail-in ballots. So that was awesome to see for PA. As a PA native, no longer a PA resident, PA native, good to see my home state showing out and participating in democracy. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Fake news on the fantasy thing, but real news. Real news on the election. Listen, the fantasy games were clearly rigged. There's clearly voter fraud going on. No, I'm kidding.
People are saying.
But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. Thank you guys for exercising your vote and returning us back to some sense of normalcy. However, biggest thing I want to preach, I'm glad you brought that up. Biggest thing I want to preach before we let you guys go. This is not by any means over as far as your work. Like, if you care about the things that happen in your community, do something about it, right? Like this, it's the good job. Thank you guys for turning out. I think this is the most voter turnout that we've had in history.
Both sides received the most votes ever.
Exactly. So, and that's how it should be. This is how it should be. Hopefully we can get back to less misinformation being spread on social media. Stop falling for information. Do your research. Like, when you see something on your timeline, just double check it. Just double check it to make sure that it's Google it quick and see if you can find some context. Hopefully we can get back to not having these ridiculous conspiracy theories, about certain people in politics and whatnot. And the other thing I want to preach, especially to the Black community. So there's this distrust, right, amongst Black people with the system. 100% warranted. Like, there's literally no argument for any Black person who doesn't trust any politician. Cool, fine, keep that energy. But what's not productive is going on Twitter like, oh, well, Joe Biden's not going to save us, or Kamala's not going to save us. Like, okay, do you guys feel good because you voted? Like, stuff like that is completely unproductive. So if you care about the Black community, here's something that you can do. Stop tweeting about what won't be done and talk about what will be done or needs to be done, and then do something about it. So if you're mad about mass incarceration, you're mad about Joe Biden's crime bill, go to your local congressman, senator, whoever you need to talk to. Take it up with them. They don't see your tweets, right? So if you have an opinion to voice it to someone who's at least going to hear it and consider it. The biggest thing about Joe Biden being in office is that the way to peacefully implement change is through democracy, right? So now we have someone who actually believes in democracy. We avoided how dangerously close we were getting to fascism, where you wouldn't have had a say. So
we're still close to it.
We're still very close to it. We're not out of the woods, but like we're going to start to move back, you know what I mean, in the direction of democracy, at least somewhat of a democracy, I should say republic, but at least to the point where your voice might actually mean something. So organize with your community, get some community leaders, maybe talk to the NAACP. You don't trust the NAACP, talk to the BLM org. You don't trust them, make your own organization. Like do whatever you need to do in order to get multiple voices within your community to go talk to someone who can do something to help us. Because at this point, you going on Twitter, using your 280 characters to talk about what's not going to happen for the Black community literally helps no one. So get off social media, get out in real life and do something and enact some change. That way, we actually are making some progress and not just talking about it. Like we're at the point where everybody pretty much understands the systemic part of racism, right? Like even if you're one of those people out there who's denying it, you at least understand the argument is out there. We've put the points out how it's impacting us. So come up with creative solutions to fix it, or don't say anything at all. You know what I mean? Just, you know what I mean? Because you're not helping.
Right.
That's the one thing I want to leave anybody who's listening to the podcast at this point. Leave it at that.
Beautifully said.
But thank you guys for tuning in to another episode 52 of the All In Podcast. We will see you guys again later this week. Remember, check out allinnetwork.net for my article coming out, and make sure you download that app available on the Apple Store and Google Play Store. See you guys later.
Peace.